Hello, today is Thursday, April 14th, 2022. My name is Andrea Rodriguez Garcia. I am interviewing Jackie Reyna for the University Library Special Collection and Archives at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, hereafter abbreviated as UTRGV. This project is in partnership with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please know, Ms. Reyna, that this interview will be placed in the University Library Special Collections and Archives at UTRGV and shared with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. If there is anything you do not wish to answer or talk about, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there is something you want to talk about, please bring it up and we'll talk about it. The University Library Special Collections and Archives will archive your interview along with any other photographs and other documentation you are willing to share. UTRGV University Library will retain copyright or non-exclusive right to the interview and any other materials you donate to Special Collections and Archives at UTRGV. Because we are not conducting this interview in person, I need to record you consenting to make sure you agree with our interview procedures before we continue. So I'll ask you a series of 6 questions. Please say yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each question. Do you give University Library Special Collections and Archives at UTRGV consent to archive your interview and your materials at the UTRGV University Library?
Yes, I agree.
Do you grant UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives right, title, and interest in copyright over the interview and any materials you provide?
Yes, I agree.
Do you agree to allow UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes, I agree.
Do you grant the University Library Special Collections and Archives consent to share your Zoom interview with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin for inclusion in the Voces of a Pandemic Oral History mini project, which will include posting the interview on the internet?
Yes, I agree.
As you recalled, we previously filled out a pre-interview form. We use information from the pre-interview form to help in research. The entire form is kept in a secure Voces server at the University of Texas at Austin. Before Voces sends its UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives, we will have stripped out any contact information for yourself or family members, so that will not be part of your public file. Your public file will only be accessible at UTRGV University Library. The final 2 questions ask for your consent on what I just described. Do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in your public file available to researchers at UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives?
Yes, I agree.
On occasion, UTRGV Special Collections and Archives and Voces receive requests from journalists who wish to contact our interview subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give consent for us to share your phone numbers or email with journalists?
No, I don't agree.
Okay. Thank you for your consent. Your experiences and stories mean a lot to us at UTRGV Special Collections and Archives. I look forward to what you say in interview questions I will now ask. Okay, that's fine. Let's begin. Let's drink some water. Okay. So the project question is, what are the stories and experiences of Latinos, Latinas, or Latinx people in South Texas during the COVID-19 pandemic? So The project purpose is to provide Mexican, American, Hispanic, Latinos people, or Latino, Latina, Latinx people accessibility to tell their COVID-19 pandemic stories in a meaningful way that results in quality digital documentation and institutional archival presentations so students, academics, and others in the public may learn about, study, and/or reference these stories now and in the future to better understand how this pandemic affects the Latino community and potentially create relevant solutions. So I know it's been like 2 years since the pandemic, right? So we're like kind of over the hurdle, but not really.
Almost.
Almost. Okay, so Miss Reyna, thank you for your time. Like I said earlier, your stories and experiences are valuable to us at UTRGV Special Collections and Archives and to our partners at the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin, because you are a high school English teacher, a resident of the city of Weslaco, Texas, and because you are a wife, partner, and mother of 2 teenage students and 1 adult, I know you have many meaningful stories and experiences to share on how COVID-19 has impacted these roles you carry out in your life. Do you hear that feedback from me?
No.
So before we talk about COVID-19 stories, can you please share with us a bit about yourself, who you are and how you wish to be known? Who is Jackie Reyna?
Well, my name's Jackie Reyna. I mean, everyone knows me by Jackie. 37 years old, I think. No, I'm 37. I've lived in the Valley my whole life. I was born in Houston, Texas, small town around Houston, but the majority of my life I was grown up and raised here in the Valley. Typical teenager. I did have my children really young, went off to college, decided, I needed to get a college degree and became a teacher. So now here I am, about 10 years of teaching total, 7 years at PSJA and mom of 3. Busy life.
All right. Thank you. So this first section of questions asks you to please share your stories and memories from when the COVID-19 pandemic made its first impacts in December 2019 to about the summer of 2020. The first question I want to ask you is, can you share some memorable stories about how you first heard or learned about COVID-19 from your children, on social media, etc.?
And I really didn't think anything of it. I was just like, okay, something new always comes up. And I really just let it pass my mind, didn't put any thought into it. And then the next week, I was on social media again, I believe it was Twitter. And I saw, cases were rising, people were getting hospitalized. And I was like, okay, well, this is going to be somewhat like probably like swine flu back in early 2000s. And I had barely had my son during the whole swine flu, I guess, pandemic then. And nothing really came about it over here. So I really didn't think about anything. It wasn't until February I did notice that, cases were rising, and all of a sudden there could have been a case here in the United States and whatnot. And then it was just like full blown where I was like, okay, nervous, I'm a mom. I didn't know what to do and how was I going to protect my kids? But that's when I first heard about it.
Okay, thank you. What were some early reports or rumors about COVID-19 that you remember back from 2020?
Rumors. I heard basically it was like a cold, but but you would get hospitalized. It's possible that you got sick from your lungs a little bit more. You weren't able to, cough up that phlegm that you normally cough up, and high rate of death, and that was where I was just like, oh my God, like the fear set in at that moment when I started hearing like death this and death that, and possibility of being hospitalized, and not, don't go to the hospital, because if you go to the hospital, this can happen. And it was just, you want to go to the hospital when you're sick, but then people are telling you don't go to the hospital because people are dying. And I think that's when it was just like, okay, this is real.
Mhm. At what point did you realize this pandemic was a serious life-altering event, or do you not think it's serious? But
Actually, yeah, because March, when it was just one day to the next, everything was fine. I think I had a couple of kids that were out for like a week. Actually two. I had two kids out the week before spring break. They were sick. They came back maybe like 2 days later. 2 days before we were automatically like let out of school. And of course they didn't have COVID, but in the back of my mind, it was like, okay, COVID's around, possibility that they had it. And when things got real was when we got that email, probably midnight, close to midnight. And it was just like, school's closed. You can come back for 15 minutes, grab whatever you can, and get out, basically. So I was like, oh my God, like this is real. Like what's going on? I think like I had a whole panic mode, and that morning I woke up and I was like, okay, let me go and try to get all my bags and try to get all my necessities that I left in my classroom, and got out. We had a mask on. I think they gave us gloves even. And it was just like, go in, go out. At that moment, I was like, this is real. Like, there's no reason a school would tell us all of a sudden, what, we're not coming back. We got to wait. So yeah, that was the instance where I was like, okay, something's going on. This has to be real for a school to be actually closing.
definitely. Do you remember what it was like for you during the stay-at-home orders in 2020? Do you have any stories from this time you could tell?
Yeah, my partner was at work.
Where?
He works 9 hours away, and I was constantly telling him like, things are closing, Walmarts are closing early. There's, school closed. We can't be out on the streets. There's curfews. And he didn't believe me. He was just like, what are you talking about? Like, everything over here is normal. Like, what's going on down there? And it wasn't until he came home and he was like, oh, let's go to Academy. And I was like, we can't go to Academy. Like, we're on a lockdown. And he was like, no, like, and he got in his car, he drove, he saw like nobody was on the streets, like Academy was closed. And it was like, okay, like he started seeing, okay, this is real, so what's going on? And finally came home and he's like, well, then we need to go grocery shopping if we're going to be stuck here at home. So we went grocery shopping. Of course, everything was going off the shelves really fast. We couldn't find really much anything. The stuff that we did find, I came home and I left everything on my porch. And my daughters came out and they're like, why do you have all the groceries out on the porch? And I was like, we got to clean everything. We got to sanitize everything. So I was there, Clorox bottle, paper towels, spray the paper towels with Clorox, and I was wiping every single thing that I brought home. Even the plastic bags, wiping them down, everything, because I was terrified of this new virus that was here. And my daughter picks up the bag and she's like, are you going to clean these too? They were the vegetables, and I was like, don't touch anything. I made her go like Lysol her hands, like everything. And it was really bad because I was just like, it was everything that I was hearing on social media. It's mostly social media. I'm not a big TV person, so everything that I saw from TikTok to Twitter to Facebook, like everything, the world revolved around COVID at that instance. So I didn't let them touch anything until I sanitized everything. And it was just crazy that I had that whole fear and, trying to keep us safe. So yeah, that's one of probably my craziest story about the whole sanitizing thing.
Yeah, no, I definitely can relate. So I know you already mentioned this, but over the last couple of years, literally like from 2020, 2021 at the moment, what news media, social media, or other sources do you rely on to keep you informed about COVID-19? And why do you prefer these?
I've never been a TV person. I've never sat to watch the news, from being a child. My dad was a person that would watch the news every night, but that just never appealed to me. I could never just sit through watching the news. But on social media, it's just really fast information. You can read, what you want. You don't have to sit there and wait for a piece of news that came out and wait till the next piece comes out until something you want to hear. Social media is just very quick and easy to access, and it's very short, So I've normally on TikTok or Twitter. I haven't really used Twitter recently, but it is there. Facebook, and probably that's majority of things. All the other ones don't really have all of that other information that I look for.
Okay. Thank you. Can you share with me what you understand about COVID-19 as an infectious disease and how you feel it's impacted society? Likewise, can you share with me what you don't understand about COVID and wish you could know more about?
What I've learned about COVID, it's an emergent disease that changes, of course. When I first learned about it, I really didn't know much about it, but of course, social media informed me about everything that I needed to know. But I do know, like, it is a disease. It changes whenever it jumps from one thing to another, and it does get us really sick. And some people are more susceptible to it than others, and it's just, I just feel like it's a disease that's gonna stay with us forever, kind of like the flu. And so us as humans, we're gonna have to either get used to it, or we're just gonna have to live through it, just like all the other viruses that we have. We did have the swine flu, we got through it. We had flu, we take the shots every single year. So I guess what I don't understand is, we are vaccinated, and the vaccine, they say it lasts a couple of months, and then there's like, okay, we got to do a booster. Why is it that we are having to take a booster or a fourth booster, that's supposedly might be coming up? Why isn't the vaccine lasting longer than what it should?
Yeah, thank you. Do you feel your family has the same beliefs as you do about COVID-19, or are there some members who take it more seriously or lightly? How so?
I think I was the one that took it the most serious when it came out. My daughters, they wouldn't go anywhere, so they were always at home. So if anybody was going to get sick, it was going to be me or my partner. Because we were the ones going to get the groceries, we were the ones that had to be out and about getting the stuff for our home. And so my daughters were always at home. Once school went back into effect and everything, my daughters, they knew they had to wear the mask. We had to wear a mask, we wore masks everywhere. Now that it's already been 2 years already, right? 2 years, I think
Yes.
I'm more, I have that mentality that's like, okay, we're gonna have to get used to it. Like, I'm vaccinated, like I said, my partner's not vaccinated. He doesn't want to get vaccinated. My daughters, they do have their first set of shots, but I haven't gotten their second set. But even today, my daughters will wear their mask when they're out. And their school, I think their mask mandate went down the first semester of school. And even till then, they still wear the mask. My daughters will wear the mask to school today. And our mask mandate, we don't have one at our school. So I wore one since it was something we had to do. But now that we don't, I don't wear it anymore. So I just feel like I'm more like, okay, I'm gonna have to get used to it. This is something that's gonna stay here. Whereas my daughters are more like, okay, I'm still gonna wear my mask and that's it. So it was me more in the beginning. And now I'm just more like, okay, it's gonna be here and that's it. And now they're still like, they were down here and now they're up here. Like, okay, I'm still gonna take care of myself and wear my mask, use hand sanitizer. So yeah, that's our whole mentality right now. Well, I guess also my partner, he just feels like he wasn't going to get sick. He was like, it's not a real thing. And, it's not going to happen to us. And he just had that mentality where it was just like, no, like it's 1 in a million. We're really not going to get sick. We're fine. Until he got sick.
So you mentioned that you have your shot, right? you've taken the vaccine, and you don't wear the mask at school, so you feel protected, right, with the vaccine.
I feel protected. I mean, I've already gotten sick, but since I've gotten sick, I didn't get my vaccine until after. So I do feel protected. I go places without my mask, and since I've gotten sick and since I've gotten my vaccine, I haven't gotten sick. And even maybe 9 months later, my kids and my partner got sick, and they were in the household without masks the whole time that they were sick. I wasn't wearing a mask and I still didn't get sick. So I kind of feel protected. I feel okay.
Okay, thank you. Next part asks you to share any stories about COVID-19 vaccines and any vaccination-related stories you may wish to tell. Did you get the vaccine or any follow-up booster shots? So this is yes. And what was it like? Was it easy or difficult for you in terms of scheduling and wait times?
The wait time, of course, teachers got an earlier time than a lot of other people. So, I just waited our turn when it was our turn as teachers to get the vaccine. I did schedule through UTRGV, and it was really fast. I went to their hub in Harlingen. It was maybe like a 20-minute wait, and I was in and out. I did have to wait the 30 minutes after I got the vaccine because I am allergic to penicillin and some other medications. So I think when I got the vaccine, I had more anxiety, just thinking like, oh my God, what if I have a panic attack, or what if I have an allergic reaction? And after 30 minutes were up, I was fine. I actually drove to San Antonio that day, and I felt fine. The next day I did have, oh no, I'm sorry. The time I drove to San Antonio was during my second shot, but the first time I did come home, the next day my arm was really, really sore. I couldn't lift my arm, it was hard for me to change. I didn't have any other symptoms, side effects other than that, just a sore arm. My second shot, since I only had a sore arm, I was like, okay, I'm gonna be fine. I got my second shot, same process through UTRGV. I drove to San Antonio right after I got that shot. I was totally fine, fell asleep. The next day, I did feel a little queasy, but after I ate, it went away. And that day, I didn't have a sore arm. I just felt really tired. Um, Other than that, I didn't have any other side effects. So yeah, my daughters, they do you want me to speak about
Yeah,
my
that's fine.
daughters?
That's fine.
Okay, I was like, I don't know. So my daughters just got their shots this year, and they got their shots at a pharmacy there in Harlingen, and they got their shots. Let me see. It was probably like in February. We came home the next day. They actually did get side effects, so they felt like they had COVID, they said, and they were kind of scared because they're like, oh my god, what if this vaccine gave me COVID? And I was like, no, the vaccine didn't give you COVID, but it is going to sorry, it is going to make you feel sick, just like the flu shot. And my daughters don't get their yearly flu shot, so they didn't understand that they might possibly feel sick. And they were really tired. They didn't want to get out of bed. They were achy. They had a low grade fever. The only long-term side effect that they did have was they did get a ball like in their armpit area, where on the side of the injection site. And that one, they did say it was painful. I did call the pharmacy. They said it was normal. It's just, the lymph node that swelled up. And sorry about that. And and it was just the vaccine going through the body and whatnot. So they just said to massage it. It took maybe like a week to go away. And yeah, so they still need to get their second shot. They will be getting their second shot. I just need to take them.
Okay. So I believe you have answered all of my other vaccinated related vaccination questions. So we can jump on to the next part of the interview, which is about the personal impacts of the pandemic had on your life. So these questions are going to ask you how the COVID-19 has impacted your life in the way of your career and your family. Have you shared with me? No, you have shared with me before that you have two teenage daughters who live at home and a son who does not live at home. Has COVID-19 impacted your family life in terms of the way you interact with one another? Can you share with me some stories or examples on how you and your family adopted your interactions during the pandemic?
At the beginning of the pandemic, we basically were really scared of getting COVID. My kids were scared of getting COVID. My daughters, of course, anything that they touched, they would wash their hands, they would hand sanitize. If you coughed, it was just like, oh my God, call the cops, you're coughing, go to the hospital, you get that stare that's like, are you okay? You couldn't sneeze, any little thing, and they would just look at you like, are you sick? Like, it's just, you can't even cough anymore. You can't sneeze. You can't even like go anymore, because it's just like you have COVID. Mm-hmm. So now that in our household, it's like, we can't do any of that, because then they're just like, are you sick? My son, he's the type of, I can't say kid anymore. He's not a kid, but he's the type of person that will Google symptoms, and it's like, if he's coughing and it's Google tells you you're gonna die, he's gonna die. So he was the one that was really, really scared about getting COVID. He would wear the thicker, the K95 masks, right? That's what they're called. Those masks, he would not come over because he was like, you're going to school, like you went back to work in March, you're around people. What if you're sick, And he was very concerned about me going back to work and bringing something home to his sisters, So it's just the way we see things differently. Like I said, the cough, the sneeze, always washing our hands now, making sure we clean extra good around. I think we even left shoes outside before. Clorox the doorknobs more, Lysol. Before we couldn't find Lysol, so it was Clorox, right? Clorox the doorknobs. But other than that, it's just mostly, cleaning up after ourselves. And yeah.
Thank you. So how has COVID-19 impacted the lives of your two youngest children, and how has it impacted the life of your adult son? What would you say?
Well, to start off with my son, I mean, he's a college student at UTRGV, and he was the type of student that needed to be in class. Online learning was like, oh my God, like, how am I going to do this, right? So when school let out from the university, he was really nervous and scared about how he's going to pass his classes and whatnot. So I think the most it affected him was school-wise. He had to learn how to do everything online. Even though they would do stuff online, it was like online learning. But after a while, he got used to it, and now it's like, Mom, I'd rather do online learning than actually going onto campus. So I think this is his first semester where he actually had to go to campus, and he was just like, I don't know if I like it. Like, I'd rather do everything online. Like, he got used to it. Other than that, my son's very like, he goes to the gym, to school, back home. He doesn't really socialize with people because he's heard so many people have gotten sick, and he was really scared to get sick. And actually, all my kids, well, my two oldest kids, they stay away from more of the people than my youngest one does. Now for my middle one, she's ever since COVID started, she's become like this hermit. She stays at home more. She doesn't like to go out. And she was a very social person before, but she just ended up staying at home because she was scared to get sick, like I said, and friends would say, hey, let's go out, let's do this. But she'd be like, no, I want to stay home. So I feel like with this disease, it has made her more of a, she's not as social anymore. She does stay home more. She really doesn't go out. Well, she doesn't go out. She sticks to reading her book. She watches her movies, her series. But I can say for that one, COVID has changed her in that way. My youngest one, it's like we didn't have COVID. She does wear her mask and everything, but she still goes places, and it's just like, okay, my friends invited me here, my friends invited me there. So she's the one that's very outgoing. She still goes out like of nothing.
All right. And for the record, what were the ages of your children when COVID started?
So 2 years ago, my son was 19, sorry. And my middle one was a freshman. So she's a junior now. So she was about 14. She was about 14. And 14, 15. And then my youngest one was in 5th grade. So she's 13 now. She was probably around 11, 10, 11, somewhere around there.
Maybe
11.
like 9 or 10, no?
No, I think because she's going to be 14 this year. So yeah, so I think she was like 11, but she was in 5th grade. So we all let out of school in March.
March 2020.
Yeah, so she was in 5th grade, the youngest. And then the middle one, she was a freshman because she didn't have to take the STAR test, so that was a plus for her. She got exempt from all 3. And my oldest was in college, so yeah, he was a freshman in college. She's a junior right now.
All right, thank you. So you mentioned in the pre-interview server that in the spring of 2020, you began to teach remotely, but how about your partner or the rest of the adults in your household, meaning your partner? How did COVID-19 impact his employment, or did it impact his employment?
It actually did. Like I said, he didn't think this whole disease was real, and he heard, around, of course, that work was going to slow down. He does work in the oil rigs. So he did say, like, I heard work's slowing down. They're going to start putting away some rigs. And I'm like, oh, okay. And we really didn't think anything of it. Of course, when they told us that we were going to stay home, I think it was about 2 weeks later, they actually they told the crew, all right, we're going home. This is our last couple of days. And everyone was just like, what? Like, are you serious? Like, we're all of a sudden, like, why weren't we like told ahead? And they're like, oh, well, we've heard, that they're putting away rigs and they're going to go ahead and put this one away. So it was like from a couple of days to the next. He did get laid off. And he was laid off for about 9 months, from March until November, when they called him that, all right, rigs are going back up. Things are starting to, get going. So he was laid off for about, I would say, like 9 months, right? And it did affect us in a way, because we're so used to having 2 incomes, in our household. And even though, yes, we have our savings, we have all these extra little, things that we could do to help us to get through, and of course, he did file for unemployment. That did help us. But it was just like, it did affect us in a way where we had to, like, okay, we don't have as much money now, and we were worried, like, what if things didn't go back up? And then, of course, he was thinking about, all right, well, let me just apply, at HEB or at Walmart. They're giving like tons of hours away. And by the time you know it, like, they called them. So, it did bring us back about 9 months. But once he got back into work, it started going, and it was okay.
All right, that's good. So you shared with me at one point or another that several people in your family became infected with COVID-19. How did you all navigate that time as a household of 4? And did their infection occur during any of the COVID waves? Meaning, I believe it was the May of 2020, and then, well, I think all the summer of 2020, right? And then in the fall, winter of 2020, and then what else? But yeah, any of those waves.
And then we had, I guess
Delta.
The last wave was when we came back from, the Omicron.
Oh, the Omicron.
In just January.
Mhm.
Yeah, just in January.
January 2021.
I think I did get sick. It was December 2020, and I was the first one from our household to get sick. I had no clue that I was sick. I did have a friend that, she called me and did say, hey, like, we had their brother-in-law sleep over at their house. He felt sick. So he went ahead to get tested, and he came out positive. About 3 days later, her and her partner got sick. They came out positive, and we were like, okay, so me and my partner went to go get tested, because we had the girls at home. And
you had spent time with them.
Right. Yes, we did spend time with them. And they're really close friends, so we're always with them. So that's why it was a concern for us to go get tested. We were adamant about, okay, we got to go get tested. We have to make sure, like, we're safe and we keep the girls away from us. So PSJ was having their testing sites, and we went and we got our test results. 2 days later, my partner got, he came out negative. I came out as unconclusive. So it wasn't positive or negative. So I decided, okay, well, maybe I should test again, but I wasn't feeling any kind of symptoms yet. It wasn't until 4 days later, after I got test results, it was Christmas. I went to my sister's house. I wasn't feeling sick at all. I went to my partner's family's house, tons of people, went home. I laid in bed, and I was like, I'm getting chills. I feel like I don't feel well. And he's like, well, when did you start feeling this? I'm like, just now, like when I laid down, like I just felt like my body just like shut down from like one instance to the next. It was just like, you know how flu, you feel it over time, gradually, little by little. And this wasn't like the flu when you first get it. It was just like from one instance to the next. It's like my body like told me, you're sick, lay down, you know, and that's it. So then the next day I woke up and I had intense eye pain when I would move my eyes from side to side. And that's my typical flu symptom. When I get flu, it's like my eyes hurt. So I knew, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get sick. So I just didn't think COVID yet, even though I guess I was in denial still, even though I was around our friends that had COVID. And I was like, well, maybe I'm just getting flu. My eyes are hurting. So then I started getting a stuffy nose. I have chronic sinus infection. So I was like, oh, I have a really bad stuffy nose. It wasn't too bad. And then finally, I was like, okay, I'm getting chills. I had maybe a low grade fever of like 100. I finally went to the doctor, and the doctor's like, well, if you were around somebody that was positive, we're going to go ahead and give you some medication. You don't need to test again. But I was very curious. I wanted to get tested either way because of our kids, you know. So the next day I went to go get tested, and sure enough, I ended up being positive. And as soon as I found out I was positive, I made my partner go get tested. And while they were out getting tested, I put on a mask. I started bleaching everything in the house before they came home. So I bleached everything. The bleach smell didn't bother me and I didn't realize it. So I bleached everything and I secluded myself into my room. So they came home and they're like, we're negative. And I was like, okay, I'm going to stay in my room. Y'all can walk about the apartment, whatnot. I had everything I needed in my room. And my older sister came to drop off some stuff, you know, so my partner could make soup for me and whatnot, right? And she's like, I could hear her because my front window faces our door. And she's like, Jackie, you need to open the windows. And I was like, why? And she's like, it smells really bad, like bleach, like that's not good. And she's like, it's as soon as, you know, my partner opened the door, she's like, whoa, like it smells like bleach. So then that's when I realized, okay, I guess I can't smell, right? But I never realized it. So then, of course, you know, they opened the windows to let out the smell or whatever. But I was very cautious. We do have 2 restrooms here. So we have our main restroom. My daughters have their restroom. So everyone used my daughter's restroom. Well, all 3 of them used my daughter's restroom. I used the main restroom. And every time I would go out, I would Lysol, bleach everything, wash my hands. I would throw sheets on the floor. That way, once I started feeling better, I would get new sheets, but I would throw them on the floor every night. I would have a clean pair of sheets every night. And I decided, okay, I'm going to put everything that is dirty in trash bags. So we had the 30-gallon trash bags. I threw all my clothes, all the dirty clothes, towels, the blankets, sheets, everything that I've used in that until I was going to get better. That way I could wash them. In my mind, I was like, okay, if I'm better in 2 weeks, at least the virus will die in the trash bag and I can just wash everything. I did have like one symptom go away and then I would get a new symptom. It was just weird. I had the eye pain that would go away. I got the sinus infection and then that went away. And all of a sudden I had really intense back pain and then that went away. And then I did have one night where I had, I think it was like 100 fever, but I had really bad chills. And that's when I felt like I couldn't breathe. And my oxygen was not, we had the meter and it wasn't really, really low, but it was lower than my norm. And I just felt like I needed to catch my breath. I would sleep on my side. And that lasted one night. That night, I just remember drinking a whole bunch of tea. And the next day, I woke up and that went away. And I did get a really bad case of diarrhea, which was really bad. And I don't know if it was from the medication because they were giving me the ivermectin or I some kind of that parasite medicine that they were telling us to take. And the doctor, did prescribe me like a Z-Pack. I think it's ivermectin or ivermectina. I don't know. But yeah. And it's supposed to clear COVID, I guess. So since it's like a medicine for parasites and whatnot, I was thinking maybe that's what gave me the diarrhea. But after that cleared out, I felt normal. I didn't lose tons of weight. The only long-term side effect I did notice was that I did have like hair loss. Like I just felt like my hair was like falling. And it wasn't until later I saw on social media that was like one of the side effects after, for long-term COVID. It did take me a while to regain like my endurance, from working out to just like walking down the hall at work, going upstairs. I felt like I was out of breath. And that took a while longer than everything else that I had. But yeah, that was my experience. You want to know about my kids' experience? Okay. So like I said, I got mine in December. Then I got vaccinated the next year. And my partner and my daughters and my son actually all got it at the same time, which is odd because my son doesn't live with us. And so we were just like, okay, well, this is weird. But we had gone to San Antonio, me and my partner. We came back home. We were at the beach for a weekend. And then when we came back home, it was a Sunday. The next day, my partner said he didn't feel that well, whatnot. So when he gets sick, he's not the type of person that gets sick and is like a baby. He's just like, I don't want to go to the doctor. I'm fine. I'll get through it. So he felt like, okay. Tuesday came around, he felt the same way. Wednesday came around, he woke up and he was just sweating. He's like, I have fever. Like, I need to go to the doctor. And doctors were closed. The only place I would see anybody is those emergency care centers. And we took him to the McAllen emergency room. I think that's what it's called. They tested him for COVID there and he came out positive. So I was like, okay. Came back home, and as soon as we were driving home, my youngest calls me and says like, Mom, I woke up and my body hurts. And I was like, oh my God, like, okay, get ready. I'm going to take you to the emergency room. We're going to get tested. So then she's like, okay. So I told her my partner came out positive and she was like, okay. So then I get home and she's ready and we're almost out the door. And my middle child's like, I have a massive headache, Mom, and I have chills. And I was like, let's go. Like, you're going to go too. So I took them and they came out positive as well. So then I was like, okay. I got home, cleaned the entire apartment, same process. The only difference is I was like, okay, I'm vaccinated. I've had COVID before. I wasn't going to make them wear their masks because when I was sick, they would even sleep with their masks. That's how scared they were because it was the first time. I guess it was during that first whole time that RGB was getting it and we were all scared. So they even fell asleep with their masks on. And I even wore 2 masks. So during this time, I was like, I've already had it. You don't have to wear your mask. It's fine. They didn't quarantine to a room. I was out and about. Of course, they were sick, but my partner was in our room. One of my daughters stayed in the living room, and then the other one stayed in their room because they share a room. But I was out and about cleaning after themselves, cleaning all the blankets. I would give them clean blankets every day, but I would wash every day rather than putting them in a plastic bag. Cook for them. My youngest was sick for a day. It was like 24 hours. That was it. My middle child, she was sick for about 3 days. She had severe back pain. She would wake up several times a night and come to my bedroom crying that her back was hurting and she couldn't really do anything. And I was like, well, the only thing that I could really give her was melatonin that the doctor had told me, like, okay, if they can't sleep, give them melatonin to help them sleep. She did give the same medication that they gave me. So they were on all the vitamins, they were on that ivermectin, whatever that medicine is called, and the Zithromax. And my partner was the one that got the worst. He had fever for the whole 10 days, sweating. He couldn't, he would sleep all day. He would eat, but he really didn't have an appetite. He did almost faint about 7 days into it. We were outside, trying just to get clean air. And he said he stood up really quickly and he said that he saw blurry, and all of a sudden, like, his vision went black. Like, he couldn't see, his face went pale. He had no color in his face anymore. It went from like pink to like yellow, white, no color in his lips. He started panicking. I told him to sit down, and he said little by little his vision came back. It was blurry and then really bright, and then he got his vision back, and he didn't have color for a while. He was sweating really bad from his chest, and I felt like he was gonna faint, but I just kept on telling him, like, just breathe, and slow breaths. And I did take the oxygen meter, and his oxygen was really low.
Wow.
So I did call the emergency room where he had tested, and they had told me that they could give him that, I don't know if it's like that plasma or it's something that they inject into them from previous COVID patients. But then they said that actually he did the criteria. So then they said no after all. And it was like 2 days later that they approved that anybody can get it. Right. After that, he got better little by little, but it did take a long time. He does notice that he's more tired now, and the type of work that he does is very strenuous. It's a lot of labor work. So he did feel a difference from the way he was before to after COVID. My son got it at the same time. Like I said, we have no idea how that happened, but his was more like a sore throat, a sinus infection, kind of like me. And it wasn't really, really bad like the way others have gotten it. So thank God we didn't have to end up in the hospital. And we just took care of it as the best we could, did home remedies, the teas, soups, as we could.
What kind of teas? What kind of soups?
My mom would send us recipes of the teas. So it was like, what was it? I know it was chamomile. You had to put ginger. Actually, it was like 6 oranges cut in half, and precisely cut in half, squeeze, into the boiling water. I guess she heard from a friend or from her mother. So basically it's like 6 oranges, 3 lemons, 3 limes, a piece of ginger, and chamomile, and you had to boil it all up. And I think you boiled it for about 20-30 minutes and then let it cool enough for you to actually drink it. But that was like the liquid I had to continue drinking. I would drink water, but it was like, that was like the only thing that she would tell me, like, you need to drink more tea. You need to drink more tea. You need, that warm, I guess, warm liquid in your body to break up any kind of mucus. I didn't even have mucus, but she was, adamant about me drinking this tea. And then the other thing was homemade chicken noodle soup. I'm more of a caldo person, but she was like, no, it had to be chicken noodle soup, like straight home recipe of chicken noodle soup. I did eat other stuff but it was very bland, you know, bananas and toast and jello. But other than that, it was tea and soup.
All right, thank you. So do you feel your family has the same beliefs as you about COVID-19, or are there some members who take it more seriously or more lightly?
I would say my daughters take it more seriously. Well, my middle child, she's the one that's, you know, she wears masks all the time. She wears masks still at school, even though there's not that mask mandate. They lifted it, their school lifted it first semester. Um, I know, like, if we went anywhere, she was like, Mom, like, wear your mask. Like, you know, why aren't you wearing a mask? My younger one, she wears her mask too, but she's not as pressured to wear a mask, I guess, like my older one is. Now, my partner, he's very like, why are we wearing a mask? He wasn't, you know, he did get sick, like I said, but he still to this day was like, why are we wearing a mask? Or, you know, if my middle one will give us a mask, he's like, why? Like, you know, he didn't think we had to wear it. But I would say their dad as well, like he kind of dismissed it until they got COVID. I did choose to get them vaccinated. He was more against it. And when I did get them vaccinated, he was basically like, okay, well, it's gonna be on you, you know, like, I'm not vaccinated. I've been okay. Our oldest one's not vaccinated. He did get sick, but he was fine. I didn't get the girls vaccinated until after they got sick. They barely got vaccinated this year. But yeah, those are the only views that are different family wise. And I mean, we're all okay now, but those are, you know, my middle one's the one that's still adamant about wearing the masks and whatnot.
Okay. The next part asks you to share any stories about COVID-19 vaccines and any vaccination-related stories you may wish to tell. So did you
Oh.
get the COVID vaccine and any of the follow-up booster shots?
Yes, I did get them after I got sick. I got sick in December. I ended up getting vaccinated when I think it was
December when?
I got sick December right after Christmas. It was like the day after. And then I didn't get vaccinated until about March of the next year. So it was 2020 when I got sick. So 2021,
Okay.
I believe. I have both my vaccinations and then I have my booster. I got my first two from UTRGV. And then they had a hub in Harlingen. And then I got my third one at a pharmacy, well, the booster at a pharmacy in Harlingen. But I didn't have any kind of, I guess, bad side effects. I didn't have really, I had tiredness. I felt nauseated, I guess, the second time. The only thing that was bothersome was that my arm hurt, kind of like when you get the flu shot, but it was like 10 times worse. My partner had to help me put on a shirt, take off my, you know, clothes whenever I needed to bathe or whatever, but it was really hard for me to change. Um, Other than that, it wasn't so bad. I got a little bit tired, but that's it. My daughters, when they got vaccinated, they only have one. They actually got the side effects where they felt like they had COVID. And, you know, they got chills, they had a low grade fever, and they're just like, Mom, did the vaccine give us COVID? I'm like, no, it didn't. You know, it's just has to go through your body, you know, and whatnot. The other thing they did was like they got really swollen underneath their, well, in their armpit area where they have their lymph node. I had called the pharmacy and they had said it was because it was the vaccine going through that part of the body and whatnot. And it took about a week for it to go down, but it was like warm to the touch and you couldn't really touch it because it would hurt them. But other than that, it wasn't really intense side effects other than that 24-hour period where they felt like they had COVID.
Mhm. All right. And were you hesitant at all about getting it for yourself, the COVID
I
vaccine?
was, yeah, I was only because of, you hear go get the vaccine, it's good for you, it's like the flu, vaccine and whatnot. And I'm like, okay, well, I get the flu vaccine. But then you hear the other side of the story is that it changes like your DNA and um, it's just different. And I think I even saw like a video where they had blood samples from a person that did not have the vaccine. It was before they got vaccinated.
Mhm.
And all the cells, they're round and they're moving around in this petri dish, right? Whenever they're looking in this in the, what is it called?
Microscope?
Microscope. I was gonna say something else, but microscope. And they gave that person the vaccine and then they took the blood out an hour later. And the cells were no longer round anymore. They were long. They looked like worm-like and they wouldn't move rapidly anymore. They were moving very slowly. And that's how come they're saying that a lot of people that got vaccinated were getting blood clots. So I mean, I saw the video after I got vaccinated, but that went through my mind. Even though I was vaccinated, I'm like, oh my God, like I'm gonna get blood clots, and then the whole theory that everyone's gonna turn into a zombie because of the vaccine and whatnot. So I was hesitant. My dad's the one that really was like, you need to go get it. You need to go get it, you're going to be at work, you need to go get it. And he's still pushing for me to get the girl's second shot. Like he'll call me all the time and say, have you gotten them their second shot? And I'm like, no. And he's just like, come on, Jack, like you need to go get it. And, I'm trying to outweigh the options. They already have one. And in my mind, I know I'm going to go get them, but then something's stopping me.
Mhm. All right, thank you. These next set of questions are going to ask you about how COVID-19 has impacted your life in the way of your career and your family. Wait,
In my career, you said, right?
yeah, and these are the questions.
Okay.
You have shared with me that you have 2 teenage daughters at home and 1 son. Has COVID-19 impacted your family life in terms of the way you interact with one another? Can you share with me some stories or examples of how you and your family adapted your interactions during the COVID pandemic?
My immediate family or just like my family in general? My whole
Both.
family.
You can start with your immediate family and if there are like ways that, I don't know, gatherings changed, like special
okay.
events. Mhm.
So normally for special events, we all get together at my cousin's house and it's a lot of us, and we would always go to his house or we'll go to my sister's and it's a large group. But since COVID started, or since, the lockdown had started, then of course we had different views on gatherings. We had to have drive-through birthday for my daughter, right, when she turned 15. So that was something new. We went into quarantine in March and her birthday was the next month. So that was interesting, to have a drive-through birthday there. And then I believe it was only my little sister that stayed for cake, and we were actually all on different sides of the living room and scared to cough or sneeze and whatnot. And other holidays came and it was just more my immediate family, where it was like my dad and my 2 sisters and their spouses and my niece and my nephew. It wasn't my large family where it was my cousins and my aunts and the other side of the family to them. So that was different because we were so used to large gatherings, and it was kind of awkward in the beginning because we weren't so used to being small, in a small group, and we would just kind of look at each other like, what do we talk about? But and now actually tomorrow will be the first big gathering that we're having again. So we are going back to my cousin's for Easter, and we'll see the way it goes. So we're planning to have, a big party for Easter, of course, big gathering, family from both sides and whatnot. So this will be the first time since COVID that we are going to have a big gathering. So we'll see how it is tomorrow.
That's good. Sounds nice. How has COVID-19 impacted the lives of your two youngest children and the life of your adult son?
My youngest one, she's not fazed by it. She's, actually out right now. They're having a Easter with their friends. So, it's like there wasn't even COVID, she did have that little worrisome where she would wear her masks, but now it's just like back to normal for her. My middle one, she was very social before COVID, she would go out. But then COVID came and she became more introverted, I guess. She just stayed home. Of course, she was scared to get sick. She started reading more books, she watching more series, she got into anime, and now she's just home all the time. She doesn't go out anywhere, and I don't know if it's because it's just something she got used to because of quarantine, and she just never found the interest of going out anymore. I mean, we do go out, but she'll go out with me and like the family. She won't really hang out with like her friends and whatnot anymore. So she just rather be reading a book or watching TV. My oldest son, the only thing that really changed about him was he was going to school, UTRGV, and he was more of a hands-on learner. He had to be in class. And whenever they switched, he had to learn how to do everything online. So that was really hard for him that first semester. But then now he like loves online. He doesn't even want to go to UTRGV. He's just like, I have to go to classes. I'd rather do it online. So that's something that changed about him as well. Like he learned how to do something different rather than just learning online. He was forced to, hands-on. He was forced to learn online and he got used to it. He did become more of a, oh my God, I have a cough, I got COVID, I got a sneeze, I got COVID. Any little thing, his finger can be broken and he has COVID. So that's what's changed about him.
All right, thank you. You mentioned in the pre-interview survey that in the spring of 2020, you began to teach remotely, but how about your partner? How did COVID-19 impact his employment?
So actually, when we were told we were not going to go back to work, he was very like, why? Like, what's going on? Because where he works at, he works in West Texas, so nothing was really going on. People were still out and about, people were still working. And so it was news to him for him to hear that, hey, teachers are not going back, anymore, and I would tell him like things are closing down, we have a curfew here. And he really didn't believe it. He was just like, what's going on down there? Like, what the heck? So when he finally, I think it was like the last 3 days before he was on his way home, because he works 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So it was the last 3 days they said, hey, we're being laid off. They're putting up some rigs, they're putting our rigs up. And the question was like, why? Like, why are we being laid off? And I don't know how COVID and closing down affected the oil industry, but something happened and they were putting rigs up. They were stacking them up and they no longer needed that group to work on that rig anymore. So he was laid off for about 9 months before they called him back that things were starting to get back into order. And it was hard, we were used to having that 2-income paycheck, and he did have to file for unemployment. We got that, it did help. It was just, we were used to a set income that we both have for both of us. But other than that, it was just the 9 months that he was off that really, really affected us. And then once he went back in November, everything kind of changed, and we went back to normal when it came to working.
All right, that's good. You shared with me that at one point or another, several people in your family became infected with COVID-19. How did you all navigate that time as a household? Did their infection occur during any of the COVID waves?
I don't know. I think my infection was during a COVID wave, I would think, because it was still new.
Mhm.
Um,
In the you said December, right? So in the wind.
yeah, it was December 2020, right?
Mhm.
That's when it started. So, December 2020, I actually had gotten, well, me and my partner went to go get tested, and we came out well, he came out negative, I came out inconclusive, where it wasn't positive or negative. But then I think it was like 4 days later, I started feeling symptoms. It was actually Christmas night, after I had already spent Christmas with my immediate family and his immediate family. And that night I got home, and it was just like my body was like, okay, you're sick, shut down. And I had felt fine the whole day, but then the next morning my eyes started hurting, and I had like a stuffy nose and whatnot. So I decided to go get retested, and it ended up being positive. And I went ahead and made my partner and my two daughters go get tested. And while they were out getting tested, I like cleaned my whole house with Clorox, and I didn't even know that my smell had gone away then, because I think I used about half a bottle of Clorox, like straight Clorox. And mopping and cleaning the counters and everything. And when they told me they were negative, I was like, okay, I'm going to quarantine myself in my bedroom. They were out and about in the living room and, their bedrooms, but my partner slept on the couch. They slept with masks on, because it was like COVID was new here. It wasn't new, but it was new for us,
Mhm.
and they wore masks to go to sleep. I wore 2 masks. Anytime that I left the bedroom was just to go straight to the restroom, and I would clean like up after myself. Any dirty clothes or blankets, I would change my sheets every day. I would put everything into like a 30-gallon bag to make sure that no one touched them. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to be in my room for 2 weeks, at least like COVID will be inside the bag, and it should die out within like 3 days or whatever, right? I would have my windows open in my bedroom, and actually my sister had come to drop off um some groceries to make soup and the teas, and my partner opened the door, and she was like, whoa, like your house smells like Clorox, you need to open up the windows. And I was like, I don't smell anything, because I could hear through the window, because my window's right next to my front door. And she was like, you need to open up the windows, or my partner needs to open up the windows, it's really bad. And I was like, I don't smell anything. And then that's when I realized, okay, I did lose, I guess, my sense of smell, because I didn't smell any of the Clorox, and obviously she did as soon as he opened the door. Now when they got sick, it was different. I kept myself in that bedroom when I was sick, and like I said, they wore masks to sleep. I wore 2 masks. They got sick the next year, which was 2021, in August, all 3 of them. And my son doesn't live with us, but he also got sick at the same time that they got sick. And I believe my partner got sick on Monday. Like he started feeling, body aches. He had chills. And then by Wednesday, he had fever. So he's like, you know what, let's go get tested. So I went to the McAllen emergency room. He came out positive. So then on our way back, my youngest one called me and was like, Mom, I feel like crap. Like my body hurts. I think I have fever. I'm really cold. So I was like, okay, get ready. I'm going to take you to McAllen to go get tested. And so we get home and we're out the door and I'm about to tell my older one, the middle one, which is um, the one that stays in her room now. I told her we're gonna go get Ava tested, and she's like, well, my head hurts and I have a little bit of chills. I think I'm getting sick. So I was like, you know what, just get ready, let me take y'all both. So they put on their masks automatically because they always wear their masks, right? And I went to go get them tested, and of course they came out positive. So we came home and I had told him, well, all three of y'all are positive and I'm the only one that's negative. I've already had COVID. I have my vaccine. So I felt somewhat okay. I felt kind of protected. I told them they don't have to wear their masks. You know, we're in the apartment. We were all walking around, you know, it was like we were just quarantined to our, you know, to our apartment. It wasn't, nobody was quarantined to rooms. And we were just here acting normal, and I would cook the soup and the teas for them and gave them their vitamins. I actually made, like, I had to make a schedule because it was three of them sick, so I had to write down like all the times and whatnot. And their doctor gave them the same medicine that I took. The youngest one was only sick for 24 hours and then it was just like normal. The older one, she was sick about 3-4 days, and she was the one that had really bad fever, and she would wake up every night that her back hurt. She was very uncomfortable, and she did say that it was hard for her to breathe. So she was sick for longer, and then my partner was sick for the whole 2 weeks, where he had fever every day. He had to take Tylenol every 6 to 8 hours. I believe it was like day 7 where he actually almost fainted. His sight went blurry, it went black, and then he started sweating profusely. And his color just on his face just went pale. His lips were no longer pink, they were yellow. And then that was for about like 3-4 minutes, and then finally his sight came back, and I'm guessing his the blood oxygen level had gone down. So that was really scary at that point. I think that was like my biggest scare between all of us. And then within the 14 days, you know, or it was 10 days by then already, everyone was well, my daughters were okay, and it just took him the whole 14 days to get better. My son, he was sick, more like a sinus infection. He did have like a little bit of coughing, but it wasn't too bad. His fever would come and go. But the same thing, I actually made him soup and went to go drop it off to him. I made him tea as well and went to go drop it off. So that's the only difference that there was between when I was sick and when they were sick. I think we were more scared when I was sick because it was brand new. Whereas when they were sick, it was already here for what, 1.5 years, I believe, right? Or 2 years?
Year and a few months.
Yeah. So you know, there was a lot of reports, you know, of course there's deaths, but we weren't as scared by then.
Absolutely. All right. And then that's the last question there. So next, we are going to discuss questions that focus on your transition to working from home as an English teacher at FAR San Juan Alamo ISD or PSJA ISD. Just to get some background on your place of employment, what can you tell me about your campus, PSJA Southwest Early College High School? It's where it's located, or the students themselves, the typical environment at the school.
We're located in South Bar, right?
South Bar,
the
Texas.
Smeagol area, South Bar, Texas. I forgot the Texas part, sorry. Our students, they're mostly Hispanic, right? We have a couple of them that aren't, but the majority of our population are Hispanic. And our kids are interesting. Because I think about where we work, and then I think about like my own kids' district, and the kids are really different, the populations. Um, I believe that our district with our set of kids are the kids that um I don't know how to describe them, but compared to my daughter's district, I would feel like they love that teacher student connection that you can have with them. They have this sort of way where they want to connect with the teacher. Of course, you have the students that don't want to connect with the teacher, but the majority of our kids, when you think about it, they have some kind of connection where they're just like wanting to learn, and um we do have those classes. When I taught my junior classes, those were the retesters, right? They have a different attitude, of course. They have those that don't care. They feel like they're just going to go out into the industry, like the oil field or cosmetology, and do that. But then now teaching my freshmen, not all the kids are like that. That's where I feel like the kids want to have that connection with the teacher. But yeah, they're interesting.
Thank you. Can you recall the procedures PSJISD first took when you began to work remotely in March 2020? Were you required to attend meetings during that time? How did you communicate with your students at that time? What steps have the school district taken to prepare its staff and students to deal with remote learning?
So when we left March 2020, it was chaotic. It was we really didn't know what we were going to do, how we were going to teach. We just knew, okay, we're not going to teach at our school anymore. So of course we had already had our laptops, but the big issue is how are we going to issue all the campus, all these students, these laptops, and how are we going to teach from home? So I think that was the confusing part for us. Once we started having meetings with our admin and our principal, things started becoming more clear, but we had a lot of learning to do. We had to learn how to navigate Google Classroom, how to use Teams, how to use specific apps to help teach, and keep the kids engaged, like Pear Deck or what other ones? I use Pear Deck. Nearpod. I didn't use Nearpod, but I used Pear Deck every day because those kids were able to interact in real time and you could see. So we had to learn how to use a bunch of different things, how to record the meetings, how to make phone calls from our laptops. And we did have online meetings, and Mr. Whitelaw, which is our tech person, right? Head tech person. I don't know the specific name, but he's the one that, would say, you got this, we're going to use this, we could do it this way. And he was awesome. He taught us how to navigate the laptop and helped us teach from our laptops, right? I would have never done it without him or learned how to do it because I was so used to paper, pencil, making copies all the time. So it was like, how am I going to teach from a screen? We did have to have our cameras on, the students, we were expecting them to log on, but of course, with that, it's going to be a challenge. With my classes, it was the retester classes. So out of 15, I had maybe like 4 log on the most with those type of classes. And now, with my freshmen, it's like if they had gotten COVID throughout the year, they were doing their assignments online, because now it's like I still do paper and pencil, but I also have the assignments on Google Classroom, because this year was like a hit and miss with COVID. We didn't know if we were going to go back home. We didn't know if we were going to teach from school, the whole time. So it was like, you better be ready, right? And so how I did it then was purely online. It was just like, okay, sometimes I would be waiting for students and nobody would log on at all. And so, I would try to get cleaning done during those times. But that was during March 2020 through May 2020.
Okay. Let's jump to the 2020-2021 school year. How did yours and your family's routine change once the new school year began? How did you navigate working from home while at the same time your younger children attended virtual schooling?
I can say the good thing about my own kids was that I've never had to pressure them to log on. They naturally did it on their own, but they're the type of kids that wake up on their own, they get dressed, and they tell me when they're ready, and I would take them to school. But with teaching and them learning from home, it was the same thing. I didn't have class until 8:30, so technically I didn't have to wake up until what, like 8, make sure I was decent, and then, get ready for class. But my youngest one had to be online by 7:20. So she was already up, and online doing assignments and whatnot by the time I was getting up. And same thing for my older one. She didn't have class until 8:15, but I would just open the door and she would have her laptop. She would be in bed, but like she would be sitting up with her laptop, with her, paper or whatnot and stuff. And I've never really had problems with them logging on. So that wasn't an issue for me. I think the biggest challenge teaching from home and having them here was having to feed them or having them interrupt me, and they're used to me being home and they're like, Mom, do this, or Mom, can you do that? Or Mom, I need help with this. But being online, I would have to say, all right, like I have class, like you need to wait. Or sometimes I would even tell my students, like, can you give me a minute? And I would help whoever needed help with whatever, and then get back to class. The biggest challenge also was lunch. Sometimes I would be in class, have them do independent work online, and same time cooking. Of course it didn't show me cooking, but I would have a screen, that way I could just get them fed and then get back to class. So being a parent and a teacher at the same time during that time period was hectic, but they did their part. I was able to do my part, and it got easier throughout along the journey.
All right, that's good to hear. What were the job expectations for teachers during virtual school? And were those expectations matched with the proper professional development?
I mean, our expectations were the same from when we were at school. I can say maybe they were a little bit more lenient because they knew that we were at home. They knew we were parents. For those of us that are parents, they knew things were gonna come up. Kids were gonna get sick. We were gonna get sick. But same expectations. We had to be online. We had to make sure we were available to the kids. We had to make phone calls. We need to make sure that we were logging everything down. We had to attend meetings online. So it was the same thing, but of course, if something happened along the way, we would just have to let them know. That's where the leniency came into place. But same kind of expectations, you had to be professional at home as well. So just because we were at home, it wasn't just like we weren't doing anything. We had to make sure that we were available to our kids, even if our kids did not show up. Sometimes I didn't have any kids, but I had to have my laptop on. I had to make sure I had that notification on just in case a kid enters the virtual class. and whatnot, because those were, I guess that's what they expected of us. It's still a job that we worked from 8 to 4:30, 4:20 then, or it was 4:10 then. But yeah, it was same kind of expectations with a little bit of leniency.
Yeah. Okay. So the last question here in this section is describe how the transition back to in-person teaching has been for you.
So going back to school 21, 22, right?
Mhm.
Well, like I said, my kids and my partner had gone sick, and it was that summer going back to school. It was actually July, beginning of August, late July, beginning of August. So I was like, oh my God, like we're gonna go back to school, and my kids were just sick. When we finally, started getting ready, we had to make sure we had masks available. I guess the biggest part was I felt like I forgot how to teach to students, only because sometimes my students wouldn't be online, or I would have one or two, and it felt more like tutoring than teaching a whole class. And I guess I was struggling the first semester, and I was really stressed out. I had a lot of anxiety. It's really hard to teach from a mask, right? So reading to kids, directing kids, instructing kids, you felt out of breath. And I know the type of teachers I am and you are, we're always walking around. We're at our desks, maybe doing attendance, and then other than that, like we're up and down, trying to help the kids. But I just felt like I was lost, and I don't know why I felt like that. If I had already taught for about 10 years, and at that district it was 7 years, and I just felt lost, and there was times where I would just want to walk out. I was so stressed out, and I had so much anxiety that I just wanted to walk out those back doors and not come back again. But I just kept pushing myself, and little by little, it started becoming normal. And I think the reason why it was challenging was because I do teach freshmen now, and they skipped all of 8th grade. They went home, March of their 7th grade year. They skipped all of 8th grade. So when they came to be their freshman year, they still had that little kid mentality, where it was like they were still 7th graders. And then they missed out that whole 8th grade year because we don't know if they were logging in online. If they were like my kids before, they weren't logging on. So I was really stressed out, and it wasn't only me, it was everyone. Everyone was feeling the stress. And then when we came back in January, that wave hit with Omicron, right? So it was January when we came back from New Year's. I had very little kids as well, but we kept on teaching. I was still teaching from the classroom, but all those kids that stayed at home did all the assignments online. And now it's already April, and it's like things went back to normal all of a sudden, like from 1 month to the next. Actually, from January to February, it was like, okay, what happened to COVID? And now that we don't have the mask mandate, it's like nobody talks about COVID. It's rare that you will hear someone sneeze and somebody say COVID. But I guess what I like that we're doing now is that we do know how to teach from online and then teach in a normal classroom. So if anything were to happen again where we would have to shut down again, we have all those protocols, and we have all that experience that we've been through to help us get through that whole online learning again.
Mhm. All right, thank you. So you've already answered some of the questions that are in the next section that talk
Sorry.
about how no, it's okay, it's perfect. The next section is about how this pandemic is affecting your work in the classroom. So the first question was going to be about the type of students that you service. So is there anything else you want to add about your current freshman class, or the retester students that you used to work with?
No, I think I've already explained for the most part. I mean, the juniors and the freshmen is totally two different groups. I feel like if we did go down and have that mandatory stay at home mandate again, you know, being a freshman teacher, I think it would be a lot easier now with these kids, only because we've already been through it online and they know the expectations since we've been at school this whole time. So
Mhm.
it's not like, hey, we don't know what's going on, we're not going to do it. It's like they're expected. And with my freshmen this year, I do everything, like I said, paper and pencil, but also online. So they have assignments the first 30 minutes online, and then after that it's, you know, me teaching full force in the classroom, and they have paper and pencil. Now if I were back with the juniors, I think it would be different. They still have that mentality where it's like, oh, who cares, from what I've seen this year. So I think it would be more of a challenge with them, which I'm really happy with the freshmen right now. You know, it was a struggle in the beginning, wanted to walk out those doors, but now it's like, I think I would rather stay with the freshmen if, you know, we had to go back home.
Okay. Um, so were you concerned about the effectiveness of remote online learning during that, for like the impact it would have on students?
I think I was, for the most part, only because I felt like real teaching wasn't happening. Even though we were teaching, but it wasn't real teaching, like real life teaching, where you're in front of a kid. Yes, you're in front of them in a screen, but you can't control their behavior. You can't control their disruptions. It's a lot harder to um I guess tell a kid, you know, you need to settle down, or you need to get to work, because they're in their environment, you know, at home. They're not in our classroom environment. And so whenever we're in a classroom environment, they know our rules. They know, you know, our expectations. They know how we work the classroom, and they know what they can do and what they cannot do. But teaching online and them being in their home environment, it was difficult because they have their own rules, you know, they have their own expectations. So I was really concerned about the effectiveness, because it's like they could be online and then all of a sudden their screen goes black, and yes, it says Andrea on there, right, that she's online, but she could be asleep. And parents didn't know about this because they're at work. And you know, I just felt like a lot of learning was not going on, even though we were trying our best.
Mhm.
And with the freshmen, I think that's what made it so hard, because they skipped out that whole 8th grade year, because I don't know if they were online or not, you know, and that was the biggest struggle.
Definitely. Do you recall your school district's announcement that it would return to in-person instruction in the fall of 2021? And how did you feel about it at the time? I know you already mentioned a little bit, but what was your initial reaction?
Reaction, I think I was scared, only because my kids and my partner had just had COVID, even though we were like okay with it, but I was like, oh my God, like we're gonna be in a class full of kids. How is this gonna work? But then I guess I just kept telling myself, like, I go to HEB, I go to Walmart, you know, as long as I wear my mask, I should be okay. You know, hand sanitize, I should be fine. Um, I just made sure to wear my mask all the time, and little by little I got used to it. And now it's just like I don't wear my mask at work, and I just feel like not protected, but in a sense protected
Mhm.
either way. But in the beginning, it was a little nerve-wracking because we didn't know how the school year was gonna be. We didn't know if we were gonna be sent home all of a sudden. We didn't know if we were gonna get clusters of COVID. And there was actually hallways that were kind of cleared out because a class or one person would get COVID, and all of a sudden the majority of the class had COVID. And by the time you know it, in January, it was like, oh, this teacher's out. I think we had like 5 teachers out in one hall. And that was our hall. And then the majority of our kids. And I would be like, I only have 4 kids. Like, where are all my kids? But it was because of COVID, that whole monocron wave. But I think that was the nerve-wracking thing. I didn't know what to expect.
All right. And so what were the kinds of policies that PSJASD enacted in response to COVID-19?
The policies, right, of us going back.
Like, what were some of the procedures that were put in place for teachers and students?
We had to scan the QR code, answer questions, if we had any kind of symptoms, if we had been around anybody that came out positive. So if we answered yes, of course, like, we couldn't go to campus, right? If we answered no, then we would get our temperature checked, make sure we don't have fever. We had to wear our masks at all times. I know that we were trying to have our meetings where we would be in our own classrooms and just have meetings online, but that didn't take place. We ended up having meetings, all in one class, which was fine. I mean, we were all wearing our masks either way, but we still had our laptops on for the meetings, right? So what else did we have to do? We had the shields, the desk shields for our students. And if they came off, they would put them right back on. So they had a lot of procedures that were taking place. We just had to make sure to ask for the resources that we needed if we needed them.
All right. So what has your school district done to encourage its staff and students to return to campus in the fall of 2021 and beyond? Not just disinfecting measures, but also vaccine incentives. For example, I know I read in the news that the PSJASD is offering gift cards to students who show proof of vaccination. So how about something for teachers?
I didn't recall before, but now I remember that we had that $300 incentive if we were vaccinated. I believe it was $300. And then we also had that other incentive where I don't remember the exact amount, but it was a pretty big chunk of money where, as long as we were going to be there the whole year and we didn't leave all of a sudden because of COVID, then we were able to get this money. It was actually in December, right, when we got the money?
And I believe it was close to the matching, like an extra salary, I guess.
Yeah.
Like matching the salary, the monthly salary. So instead of 12 months,
salary, right?
Instead of 12 months, it will be a 13-month, as long as no one leaves the job. And
then if we did leave, then they would take away our last paycheck, right?
Or withhold it, yes.
Withhold it, take away, withhold. Same thing, but they would take it away.
Since schools returned to in-person schooling in the fall of 2021, with limited or no options for online learning, do you consider this school year typical or challenging after returning from a year and a half of online learning in household?
Challenging, very challenging. Now it's not as much challenging. It's gone easier. But like I said in the beginning, it was like I wanted to walk out those doors and never return again. I was seriously thinking about applying elsewhere, doing a whole other job other than teaching, but it's gone easier and I've gotten used to being back in the classroom. So thank God for that.
All right. So the final set of questions, this last section asks you to share any stories or have any stories you have about this pandemic and the response by local, state, and national elected officials. Feel free to respond or pass on any of the questions. Do you feel satisfied with the local response to COVID-19 in Hidalgo County over the last 2 years?
We can pass.
Are you satisfied with the state response to COVID-19 led by Governor Abbott over the last couple of years?
We can pass.
How do you feel about the national response to COVID-19 led by President Trump in the year 2020 and then President Biden from 2021 to present?
That's a big pass.
If you had the power of a political office to respond to COVID-19, what would you do differently?
I'll go ahead and pass.
This is a special year in our national democracy because it's a midterm election voting year. Do you plan to vote? If so, is the issue of COVID-19 going to factor into your votes?
I'll go ahead and pass.
Will you consider the national response to COVID-19 pandemic in your vote for a presidential candidate?
Wait, repeat it again? Sorry.
Will you consider the national response to the COVID-19 pandemic in your vote for a presidential candidate?
No, but we can pass.
Is there anything else you would like to share with me about your experience with COVID-19 that I have not asked you about?
No, that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Reyna, for sharing your stories with me, the Voces of a Pandemic Oral History projects.